Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mr. Bench's Book Reviews. What's in the box today? Let's put that down. Okay, it's Tales from Beatrix Potter by Beatrix Potter, and done a couple of these before, and today we're going to be doing, let me just see, The Tale of Jemima Puddle-Duck. Puddle-Duck. That's on page 71. Now, in the previous video, from this book. Unfortunately, there were a few pages missing from the story in question. That was The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. So do watch that. But I don't know if pages are missing from this one. I believe they probably are, in part. So we shall see. Yeah, even the page 71 is where it starts, and my edition starts on page 77. So that is approximately 6 pages missing. So we will get straight into the middle of the action, I expect. Fortunately, the first words here are Jemima Puddle-Duck, so we are going to be introduced at least to the principal character, who seems to be a bonnet and shawl-wearing duck, presumably called Jemima, and she's currently sprinting across some sort of hill, um, by the looks of it. So here we go. And as I say, there may be other pages missing from the rest of the story, but I can only review what's in front of me, you know. Here we go then. Jemima Puddle-Duck was not much in the habit of flying. She ran downhill a few yards, flapping her shawl. Normally a bird would flap its wings, but she's flapping her shawl, and then she jumped off into the air. It's trailing behind her a bit like a cape, like some sort of superhero. Um, So yeah, and she jumped off into the air. Is she gonna fly then? That's exciting. Oh, she is. She flew beautifully when she had got a good start. She skimmed along over the treetops until she saw an open place in the middle of the wood. Sounds like a clearing, where the trees and brushwood had been cleared. Was that what it's called, a clearing? Because someone's actually done some clearing. Never thought about that before. I assumed they were naturally occurring. But I guess it makes sense that yeah, well, that's interesting. Jemima, now that's written in capital letters here, even though it's not at the top of the page, which presumably means they've resized this image. Because normally it's the first word on every page that is in all caps. So they presumably resized the image and then not realigned the paragraphs. But I don't mind them doing that. Maybe this is a particularly good image. There seems to be Jemima and then some sort of fox reading a newspaper. So that is worth having full size or even oversized. Anyway, Jemima alighted rather heavily. That's quite a nice clause. Alighted heavily, because light obviously means the opposite of heavy, but alighting doesn't necessarily have to be done in a light manner. That's quite good from Potter. Jemima alighted rather heavily and began to waddle about in search of a convenient dry nesting place. And maybe that's what she's doing. Maybe she's looking for a nest. She's waddling. I think ducks just waddle. I don't think that means she's walking in any unusual way. Because like earlier she was running, which was unusual. So, but the waddling is referring to standard method of walking. She rather fancied a tree stump amongst some tall foxgloves. These will be these tall flowers. I don't know if I said that there was a fox reading a newspaper because it looks like it. You can only see like bits of him pointing out from behind the newspaper. I don't know if foxes often hang around near foxgloves, if there's a connection there. But there could be. Or it could just be the author giving you these little hints, which would also be kind of cool, actually, even if it's not how these plants and animal appear naturally. That's quite a nice little hint because you think, oh, is that a fox? And then there are foxgloves. It's one of these like Um, things you might get in a very good piece of literature, which I believe I have in front of me. But seated upon the stump, she was startled to find an elegantly dressed gentleman reading a newspaper. They say gentleman, but in this universe, in case you haven't read any Potter before, animals can be described as gentlemen or ladies, or an animal isn't always like a pet. They have their own, uh, you know, like motivations, desires, characters, personalities, etc., just like a person. He had black prick ears and sandy-coloured whiskers. Quack, said Jemima Puddle-Duck. That's quack with a question mark. I mean, I guess it's kind of like hello, who are you? But it's because she's a duck, she's quacking. So, quack, maybe like that. Quack, said Jemima Puddle-Duck. Um, that's a lowercase d on duck. My double-barreled name capitalizes both the first and the second names. So I'll have to keep an eye out for that. I believe in Tiggy Winkle, the other one I reviewed, Winkle was also written with a small w. That's unusual, I think. Nowadays, or it might just be old-fashioned. This was published a fair while ago. Or duck is just like a kind of there's some word for that. Like her real name is Jemima Puddle, but she gets called Jemima Puddle-Duck. A bit like in I think it's Japan, they put san on the end of someone's name, which kind of means like Mr. or bloke. So it might just be, so her real name is Jemima Puddle, but duck is just kind of an attributor or something that kind of says it's a duck called Jemima Puddle. Um, I think you got it in like old Sumerian languages. Like if you, it was kind of like the um, is used nowadays, the city. But you could even have these little things that you'd say like London, and then you just put city on the end to show that London is a city. Or you might have in old Egyptian, you'd have it after a female name, there'd be a symbol for girl that you'd put after it to show that it's a girl. Um, I believe in ancient hieroglyphic writing systems. So this might be like this. Now this duck is kind of like an attribute, signifier or something. I don't know the proper word, I'm afraid. Anyway, so Jemima Puddle-Duck with her head and her bonnet on one side. Quack, she said that again. The gentleman raised his eyes above his newspaper and looked curiously at Jemima. Madam, have you lost your way? You can see a bit more of the gentleman now, and he is looking increasingly fox-like. I don't know if foxes eat ducks. Foxes are famous for eating chickens, and ducks and chickens are not a million miles away from each other in the, in the tree of species. So I could imagine she might want to watch out for a fox. Madam, have you lost your way? Said he. He had a long bushy tail. That's the foxes are famous for a big tail. I think it's called a brush. She hasn't written brushy tail, but she probably thinks you've cottoned on that it's a fox by now after all her clues. Which he was sitting upon as the stump was somewhat damp. He also uses the tail as a cushion. That's quite smart. Although you'd think, I guess there are nerve endings in the tail as well, so just tail feels all wet. Jemima thought him mightily civil and handsome. Well, he's dressed in some sort of suit. Or maybe she just likes him. She explained that she had not lost her way, but that she was trying to find a convenient dry nesting place. Okay. Ah, is that so? Indeed, said the gentleman with sandy whiskers, looking curiously at Jemima. He looked curiously on the previous page as well, so he's just continued as curious looking. He folded up the newspaper and put it in his coat tail pocket. He's got a pocket in the coat tail. Oh, he's a smart suit then. Jemima complained of the superfluous hen. I really don't know what that is. That must be a reference to something that happened earlier in the story, on the first 6 pages. So there was a superfluous hen, and Jemima's telling the gentleman about them. Indeed, how interesting. They're not putting capital letters after question marks and exclamation marks, which is weird, I would say. I was taught to capitalize after an exclamation mark. I mean, the I is, but that's because I is always capitalized. I wish I could meet with that fowl. I would teach it to mind its own business. They're itting the hen, even though hens are always female. They could say I would teach her to mind her own business, but maybe itting it. By itting, I mean using the word it as the pronoun. Well, it almost feels like they're being a bit more, bit rude about it, you know? Not admitting its personality. But as to a nest, there is no difficulty. I have a sack full of feathers in my woodshed. No, my dear madam, you will be in nobody's way. You may sit there as long as you like, said the bushy, long-tailed gentleman. Bushy, long-tailed gentleman is a bit odd. I mean, that's suggesting that his whole person is bushy and not just his tail. Otherwise, it would be, well, I don't know how you would say it. I mean, I wouldn't say long, bushy-tailed gentleman unless you were trying to say that he was long, which I don't think they are. He led the way to a very retired, dismal-looking house amongst the foxgloves. There's the word fox again. It was built of faggots and turf, and there were two broken pails, one on top of another, by way of a chimney. I don't know how useful a chimney that's going to be unless they've cut holes in the bottom of the pails. I also don't really know what faggots are in that context, but let's just move on. This is my summer residence. You would not find my earth, my winter house, so convenient. Earth may be how foxes often refer to their houses. I've heard of foxes' dens, I think, said the hospitable gentleman, but it's possible this use of the word earth is yet another indicator that this is a fox. Foxes are quite common in things like Aesop's fables, and they're often known for their cunning. So maybe this gentleman is doing something cunning by inviting the duck, sorry, into his house. Calling it a residence as well, and a summer residence he sounds like quite a posh bloke. I mean, with his smart suit, and he seems to have at least two homes. He must be quite a wealthy animal. I mean, I guess he's like a, what do you call it, like a country gentleman who's probably inherited wealth. Not sure he works for it. There was a tumble-down shed at the back of the house, made of old soap boxes. The gentleman opened the door and showed Jemima in, although they've said it was dismal-looking and tumble-down. So maybe he's not as rich as he makes out. It's more of a status thing. You can tell people, oh, I have a summer residence, and then you actually go visit it, and it's a bit of a shack. The shed was almost quite full of feathers. It was almost suffocating. You could infer, if a fox has access to big piles of feathers, that he has been eating other fowl from which he has got these feathers, which is pretty clever, actually. It's like using the spoils of one meal to help catch the next bird for his next meal. That's quite efficient. Like in one of these factories where they use offshoots of the production process for something else. I think there was one of these cars where they recycle some of the water that comes off something, but I'm not sure exactly. But yeah, quite a genius. I mean, if he is a manufacturing whiz, one of these people who's excellent at improving efficiencies in processes, then no wonder he's so wealthy. The shed was almost quite full of feathers. It was almost suffocating, but it was comfortable and very soft. And if he's trying to kill this bird, then he won't mind it being suffocating. I mean, it's not a nice way to go, but it avoids a lot of the bloodshed, I suppose, if you just suffocate the animal and then you can just pluck it and eat it. Jemima Puddle-Duck was rather surprised to find such a vast quantity of feathers. Well, I was saying that. I mean, you have to wonder where they've come from, don't you? But it was very comfortable, and she made a nest without any trouble at all. Well done her. If she's making a nest, I guess the implication is that she intends to lay eggs, and then that would generate more ducks. So Foxy Gentleman here is going to have to weigh up his options here, whether he wants to try to wait for the big payout when the ducks grow, the baby ducks, or if he just eats the mother here. When she came out, the sandy-whiskered gentleman, they've still not explicitly said he's a fox, was sitting on a log reading. So if you had this on the radio without the pictures, you would really have to be quite attentive and listen out for the clues. When she came out, the sandy-whiskered gentleman was sitting on a log reading the newspaper. At least he had it spread out, but he was looking over the top of it. He's sitting like a bit one of these stereotypical gangsters in a park, or not gangsters, Secret Service people who like try to cover their face. In cartoons, this one's even like cut holes in the newspaper. He's just looking over the top. He hasn't cut any holes in it. But they're suggesting he's not actually that interested in the news and he's just trying to hide. Or he's not hiding very well. The newspaper doesn't even cover half his body. And you can see his big tail. So she'd have to be quite dim to not have figured out that he's a fox. He was so polite that he seemed almost sorry to let Jemima go home for the night. He promised to take great care of her nest until she came back again next day. He said he loved eggs and ducklings. He should be proud to see a fine nestful in his woodshed. Well, it does sound like he's playing a long game then, though he's hoping to get his hands on a load of additional ducklings rather than just Jemima. Oh, he's derobed now, so now you can see very clearly that he's a fox. He's taken his coat off and doesn't have a newspaper in front of him. Jemima Puddle-Duck came every afternoon. She laid 9 eggs in the nest. They were greeny white and very large. The foxy gentleman, oh, I called him a foxy gentleman. I mean, obviously, foxy doesn't normally mean you are a fox, but so maybe this is almost just like, in case you haven't realized yet, this guy is a fox. Admired them immensely. He used to turn them over and count them when Jemima was not there. That's how he'll know there were 9. At last Jemima told him that she intended to begin to sit next day. And I will bring a bag of corn with me so that I need never leave my nest until the eggs are hatched. They might catch cold, said the conscientious Jemima. Yeah, when he's counting the eggs here, that's when Jemima was not there in this picture where he's derobed. So only gets. So I guess the idea is that the suit is some kind of disguise, albeit not a very good one. But I don't know how hard it is to fool a duck. Madam, I beg you not to trouble yourself with a bag. I will provide oats. But before you commence your tedious sitting, I intend to give you a treat. Let us have a dinner party all to ourselves. Oh, it sounds like he might be going to eat her at the dinner party. Because presumably if the eggs are there, Jemima is no longer needed. He can probably get some sort of duck substitute to keep them warm. May I ask you to bring up some herbs from the farm garden to make a savoury omelette? Oh, omelette? So is he going to just eat the eggs, like as eggs, and not wait until they're ducks? Maybe. Sage and thyme and mint and 2 onions and some parsley. I don't know if those are traditional herbs that go with duck. I've heard of orange duck, I think, but I'm not sure. I'll provide lard for the stuff. Lard for the omelette, said the hospitable gentleman with sandy whiskers. Oh, she wants to be. Jemima Puddle-Duck was a simpleton. Well, I was wondering if she was a bit dim. Not even the mention of sage and onions made her suspicious. Well, then that does sound like that's I mean, sage and onion stuffing, I guess, so I guess that's often used as stuffing. Oh, when he says lard for the stuff dash, he's interrupting himself, sorry. So I provide lard for the lard for the omelette, so he's almost let slip that he means stuffing. So he does want to stuff the duck. And sage and onions, I mean, for Beatrix Potter, it seems obvious. She expects her readers to know that sage and onions go with duck. Maybe I'm a simpleton. I didn't realize straight away. I mean, I suspected it might be something like that. I just didn't have the specific background knowledge. I don't eat duck very often. She went round the, and when I have had it, it's normally been in a kind of Chinese restaurant context where they probably use different spices. and herbs. She went round the farm garden, nibbling off snippets of all the different sorts of herbs that are used for stuffing roast duck. Okay, well, let's explain it. So even if you do have readers like myself lacking in background knowledge, there's been another page ripped out. Oh dear. Well, hard to know what's going to be next then. I guess she goes around getting some onions. It's only 2 pages that are missing here, so we should be alright. Jemima Puddle-Duck went up the cart road for the last time. For the last time. So they're telling us that she's never coming back. Well, that's sad. On a sunny afternoon, she was rather burdened with the bunches of herbs and 2 onions in a bag. This fox, I mean, cunning is one word for it, but it's pretty sadistic in some ways. I mean, he's got all the feathers from his previous feasts, and then he gets Jemima. I mean, it's like when you make someone dig their own grave, getting her to bring her own onions. She flew over the wood and alighted opposite the house of the bushy, long-tailed gentleman. I like the way they say that she's a simpleton, though. So other ducks would have been smart enough and realized what was going on. But it kind of explains it because sometimes if something happens in a story that doesn't seem plausible, you're like, ah. I mean, I know this is fiction anyway, but it's sometimes nice if there's at least people at least acting in ways where you might expect people to act in real life. And if it's too ridiculous, then you sometimes kind of lose a bit of enthusiasm for the story. But if they explain that she's very stupid, then that's good. That's good narration. He, that's the gentleman, was sitting on a log. He's done that before. He sniffed the air and kept glancing uneasily around the wood. Now he seems to be worried that he's going to be caught by someone of less simple brain. When Jemima alighted, he quite jumped. Come into the house as soon as you've looked at your eggs. Give me the herbs for the omelette. Be sharp. Not quite sure he's panicking. Maybe something's going to happen. He was rather abrupt. Jemima Puddle-Duck had never heard him speak like that. Yeah, he used to be, seemed much more relaxed before. She felt surprised and uncomfortable. I mean, it could just be his pangs of conscience getting to him. While she was inside, she heard pattering feet around the back of the shed. Someone with a black nose, that's a dog, judging by the picture, sniffed at the bottom of the door and then locked it. Jemima became much alarmed. Or does our gentleman have a black nose? Oh, he kind of does, so it could be the dog or it could be the fox, not sure. A moment afterwards, there were most awful noises, barking, baying, growls and howls, squealing and groans. Dogs hunt foxes, actually. Maybe our poor gentleman is being hunted before he can eat his duck. And nothing more was ever seen of that foxy whiskered gentleman. Well, he's been taken out by some fox hunters. It's pretty gruesome. Almost feel sorry for him. I mean, he was obviously going to eat Jemima, but I being ripped to shreds by a bunch of baying hounds seems a bit harsh. I mean, he was at least giving a. Well, no. I mean, he was making her dig her own grave, metaphorically speaking. It's hard to know what page the next one is because it doesn't have a page number. Wait, 94. There seems to be something missing again. There seems to be a ripped piece of paper. This book has really seen better. I mean, the pages that are there are in quite good condition, but it's remarkable how many pages aren't there. So I think, wait a minute, I can try to reconstruct the page numbers. If that's 101, we can count back 100, 99, 98. This seems to be 96, so it's 2 missing again. So I guess she has she gets out the shed, and then the ducklings hatch. Don't know what becomes of the onions. She laid some more in June, that'll be more eggs, and she was permitted to keep them herself, but only 4 of them hatched. Jemima Puddle-Duck said that it was because of her nerves, but she had always been a bad sitter. That's a bit of a weird ending. I'm not sure who she's interacted. I don't know who's permitting her to keep them. Maybe she's gone and lived. I don't know where she is now. She's on some sort of farm. Well, I thought that was pretty harsh. I mean, obviously, our foxy gentleman was kind of the bad guy, but I felt he met a very sticky end there. I mean, that does happen occasionally. A baddie is gruesomely murdered. Um, but Jemima, I mean, what we don't know is whether she ever realized she was even in danger. I mean, she was alarmed, but she may have just been like, "Oh no, the door's closed. What's going on?" And then heard the horrible noises of the Fox massacre. And then she may have cottoned on afterwards. Hard to know quite how stupid she was. Again, sorry about the missing pages. Happened in the other stories too from this book. If that is a big problem, do let me know in the comments, and I can try not to do books with missing pages in the future. Otherwise, yeah, I must say what I very much liked in that were these allusions to the fact it was a fox without saying it's a fox. I thought that was very nice. Like you had the pictures where you could kind of see, like the very first picture, you just see the top of the ears. Um, but then referencing the fox gloves, like even the flowers around it, and then got more and more clear with the, I think it said bushy tail, and then they even said foxy gentleman, and they even showed him without his clothes on, which made it apparent even to the most uninformed reader that it was a fox. And I also thought it was quite interesting the whole duck thing on the end of Jemima Puddle's name. To keep an eye out for those. Although, if it's analogous to Mrs. Tiggy Winkle Winkle, I don't think means hedgehog, though it may do. I don't know. Anyway, that was that. I hope you enjoyed it. Do check out the other Potters on this channel, and also join me again next time for another of Mr. Bench's book reviews. Bye.